Hello, welcome back. I am Joy D. Calloway, and this is One Crisis from Crazy, the COVID edition. Today, we are talking about being productive, the V in the COVID acronym, and I am thrilled to have a dear colleague, a brother beloved with me, Kevin Fischer. He is the executive director of NAMI Michigan, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and he is a mental health advocate, a wonderful nonprofit professional, and he knows how to talk about productivity. And so I've invited him to be with us here today. Kevin, welcome and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to see you.
Good to see you too. So I first want to have people understand a little bit more about you. Tell us about NAMI and tell us about what your role is with NAMI.
So NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, is the nation's largest grassroots mental health organization that's simply dedicated to building better lives for the millions of Americans affected by mental illness. So not just for people who live with a mental health diagnosis, but for their families, caregivers, really community that supports them. So pretty much everybody.
Everybody, because we are all one crisis away, right?
Absolutely. And the entire community is affected by mental illness, whether directly or indirectly.
Absolutely.
And we want to help people live their best lives.
Tell us about a general day with you. What's a standard day like for an executive director of NAMI?
Oh, Lord have mercy. You know there's no such thing as standard. My responsibility to NAMI Michigan really serves as executive director. I'm responsible for being the liaison between our national office in Virginia and our local affiliates that really do the hands-on work in our communities. NAMI Michigan has about 15 local affiliates in the state of Michigan, directly deliver education and support programs to people in need at no cost. So NAMI is a membership organization, but anybody can come to us and we will help you. And there's no cost to do that. And that is either by providing education support so you can really understand what mental health crisis you or your loved one is living with. We connect you with resources and providers. Whatever that is, we help you do that. And then again, as the state executive director, I'm kind of an administrative office, so I provide training to my local affiliates in addition to being the liaison with the national office, fundraising activities, because we are all independent nonprofit 501c3. So even though we offer education support in the community at no cost, there's a cost for putting that on. Mm-hmm. We are a volunteer-run organization, so whether it's printing, renting office space, utilities, there's a cost to do that, and we have to go out and raise that money to support ourselves. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much what I do. In addition to, I spend a lot of time with legislative leaders, advocating for rights, access, resources for, again, anybody. And I'm gonna go beyond that and not just say affected by mental illness, but really behavioral health, because as you know, you cannot separate mental illness from suicide prevention, substance use disorder, intellectual developmental disabilities. Any and everybody is affected by mental illness. So we all family.
Well, I tell you what, I really appreciate your work. As you know, and many of our listeners know, I spent about 5 years running a community mental health agency in Detroit, and had the wonderful, that's how I met you, and the wonderful work that you do, the support that you give and your organization to the community. And as someone who has lived with depression, and I have family members that have severe persistent mental illness, the work that you all do is absolutely priceless, and your heart for it is so full and so pure, and I really appreciate, on behalf of everyone out here, we appreciate your work. We really do.
Thank you. And I feel the same about you. The opportunity to meet you and work with you in this space has been wonderful, because there are wonderful people doing this work. And I don't think people really understand that. People think of people in the mental health industry, let's call it, as, it's boring, it's this other thing. There are some dynamic people who are really passionate about taking care of people, like you, and that's what I love about what we do.
So let's talk a little bit about this pandemic. We're in and out of, and in and out of. Mm-hmm. How have the Fischers been managing the pandemic, the stay-at-home order, the quarantine, the masks? Tell us a little bit how you're managing, because that in and of itself makes you a little bit loopy.
Yes, it does. My wife and I consider ourselves really blessed because we're empty nesters, for one. which is ahead of the game because I know a lot of people struggling with having them kids at home
Babies
all
at the
day.
house all day.
All day, not just homeschooling, but the fact that they got to deal with their kids all day is more than a notion. But the other really interesting thing that we've found ourselves blessed at is we actually like each other.
Yeah.
And so we've been really comfortable spending time together. We were quarantined in the house together, both of us working from home for about 2.5 months. She's back in her office and I'm reopening my office next week. We really found it really easy to work with each other and respect each other's space and who's on a Zoom call at this time, and okay, you go to this part of the house, and we meet at the kitchen table for lunch.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting, but very positive for us.
Good.
The other part, like everybody else, is, as you mentioned, dealing with wearing the mask all the time. I have an 89-year-old mother that I'm always concerned about, and I can't see her as much as I'd like. I have a new 6-month-old grandson.
Congratulations.
Thank you, and it is the most wonderful thing in the world. But because of that, we are really cognizant of making sure that we get tested and we take each other's temperature every day and just try to be safe and really try to be a resource to our friends, because we know there are a lot of friends and family that are really struggling, whether it is simply working from home or being laid off, and I haven't gotten my unemployment money yet, and I haven't got this. And so we try to be a resource to friends and family.
That's good. Well, I'm glad you've seen the glass half full side of it, because I remember early on people were saying, I'm stuck at home. And it really was important for people like us to start saying, you're safe at home, right?
Exactly.
And many of our colleagues had the luxury, quite frankly, of working from home, even though we might have been a little stir crazy, where, as you said, many people did not have that luxury. And many people that look like us and our families are essential workers, and they didn't get to stay at home and do work. So there is a whole nother conversation on gratitude. I'll have to have you back and we can talk about that. But I will tell you what has helped me to maintain my emotional wellness is really leaning into the gratitude of this season. So thank you for introducing that. I appreciate it. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about productivity. Let me tell you how this kind of came about for me. First of all, I love words and acronyms and acrostics, and that's how the COVID thing came about. But when I thought about productivity early on in this season, there was a Facebook post that was going around that said something to the effect of, if you haven't written that book or started that business or built that house or done all this stuff in this free time, then you really must not be serious, right? Mm-hmm. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because I find my esteem in getting things done and being productive, right? And I was not being like that at the beginning of this thing. I'm an extrovert, and so to be locked up in the house, safe, but locked up in the house, as you know, and many of my listeners know, that I am also in a grief process right now. So in a grieving process where I want to just come and, hug Kevin or hug Sonia and say, I just want to stay over here and cry for a while. We couldn't do that. I took that to heart. What do you mean? I'm less than a woman. I'm less than a professional because I haven't written my book during this time. And someone later posted, thank goodness for social media, that makes sense. Someone later posted like, excuse me, we're living through a pandemic. Mm-hmm. The fact that you can get up in the morning and look in the mirror and know who you are when you don't know if you walk by somebody with the disease or whatever the case may be, is in and of itself a productive thing, right? Yeah. And so that is what really got me to thinking, what does productivity really mean in this space and time? And of course, now we're dealing with dual pandemics since, we first started this. Tell me how you defined productivity before the pandemic, and tell me if that definition has changed at all, and if it has, how?
The responsibilities haven't changed. I mean, this world we live in, where there's always something going on at the state capitol around behavioral health care that as an advocate I have to be a part of. The adjustment for me was really very much like you, being an extrovert and being out there meeting with people face to face, which is what I'm most comfortable at. Yeah. Now we have to do it this way. We're doing it through Zoom, and so that was a transition for me. I went through Zoom overload, you know, where I was literally, there were days I was on 8 or 9 different Zoom calls a day.
Yeah.
And I had to learn what's Blue Jean, what's Team, what's Zoom, what's all it, people
Right.
just keep coming at you with a different version of it. And so that's the kind of impersonal side of this has really been the transition for me, and me trying to remain productive in that space. And very much like you described with you, the onset was really difficult for me. It was hard for me to get motivated to get up and get in front of the computer and do that. And I was doing it out of necessity at first. And then as I became more comfortable with it, I really became more productive at it. I would say to people, maybe not as directly or harshly, I wouldn't be critical of people that say, well, if you haven't written that book, if you haven't did that, but for those people who, like you said, unfortunately may not be able to work from home like we are and our normal thing, if you have those to-do things that are available and you're able to do them, whether they're honey-do list around the house, or if it's write a book or learn another language or whatever, take the time to do that, because as we all struggle with this pandemic and learning whatever this new normal is going to look like, we're going to have to learn to be productive.
Absolutely.
And laying in the bed and pulling the covers over our head does us more harm than good.
Who told you I was doing that? For the first 3 weeks. You know, but something you said really stuck out to me. You said we have to get comfortable and be comfortable in this space. And we know, you know, especially people that are used to being highly productive, or people that are, you know, your type A's and just, you know, they get there again, their esteem from getting things done and checking off the list. We have to get comfortable in our discomfort so that we can redefine productivity, right? So 8, 9 Zoom calls a day, and how do I feel after that? You know, that could be a gauge of how comfortable I am. Say more about that.
Well, what's the old saying? The only thing that's constant is change.
Absolutely.
There's always going to be change. So we have to rise to that occasion and say, if this is what we have to deal with, then let's make the adjustment and deal with it, because the fact is, the world's not going to stop for us.
Absolutely.
You know, the world is not going to stop. So we have to keep moving forward, and we have to make the adjustment. And if you love, you know, we're blessed. You know, I understand, and I know some people who say, well, I'm not passionate about what I do, or I don't love what I do. We love what we do.
Absolutely.
So that makes it so much easier to make the change, to accept the change and get there.